Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, August the 29th, 2024. Today, Venus moves into Libra, and that's what I want to talk about. And I want to look at some charts with Venus in Libra in them, some famous people, and I also want to look in general at what it might mean for Venus to move from Virgo to Libra. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Thursday, August the 29th, 2024. Just a reminder, if you happen to like this video, I would be really happy if you were to like it. And if you're not subscribed, I would be super happy if you were to subscribe, because it does make a big difference. And my channel needs all the subscriptions it can get. I'm still on, 6,300 and something, or is that right? 6,300, 6,400 subscriptions. I mean, it's nice, it's better for nothing, but it still feels a long way to 10,000 subscriptions, which is, of course, my next big milestone. Anyway, let's look at what's happening today, which is Thursday, August the 29th. So here's the chart set for noon. Oh, by the way, there are some people with Venus in Libra. You can see Prince Harry has Venus in Libra. British politician and, I don't know, commentator. You can see his videos all the time on YouTube. George Galloway, he's got Venus in Libra. We've got a couple of Germans who've got Venus in Libra. We've got Joseph Goebbels, former Nazi propaganda minister, has Venus in Libra, and so does Ursula von der Leyen. The what is she? She's EU head of the EU Commission. Is that her title? I always get it mixed up. But anyway, let's look at today. So the moon is in Cancer. It remains in Cancer, and you can see that the moon is in Cancer, trine Saturn. It's nice that the moon continues to be in Cancer. It's not really making any difficult aspects. I think it's just generally well placed, and some of us might feel quite comfortable with moon in Cancer, particularly if we value emotional interaction, because of course the moon in Cancer is quite an emotional placement, and there aren't any other personal planets in water signs. Okay, Saturn is in Pisces, but Saturn has been in Pisces since the beginning of 2023. Neptune has been in Pisces for even longer. So moon in Cancer does provide a little bit of emotion, and it's quite a nurturing energy. Aside from that, Venus moves into Libra, and that happens London time at 14:23. That means 2:23 p.m. So if you're in the Americas, then this morning, Venus moves into Libra. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, Venus will move into Libra late tonight. So it kind of depends on your time zone, but I think in general we can take today as a Venus in Libra kind of day. And it's a huge change. So Venus has been in the last few degrees of Virgo, and Venus is not happy in Virgo. I mean, I know lots of us have Venus in Virgo, and it's not a problem, but Venus in Virgo technically is in it's fallen in Virgo, because Venus is exalted in Pisces. So I suppose, Venus is a planet of relating and being able to enjoy people's company and perhaps not asking too many questions. So Venus in Virgo is just asking too many questions, is too focused on detail. I suppose if you want to think about Venus and Virgo in relationships, Venus and Virgo, in terms of romantic relationships, I suppose you have those wonderful romantic moments, supposedly, and then Venus in Virgo just notices something, and that kind of spoils the magic a little bit. Or perhaps they're thinking, well, actually, how much is this person earning, maybe? And that's why there is a certain linkage between Venus and Virgo and prostitution, and along with Venus and Virgo and Venus Saturn are often two things connected with prostitution. I mean, in a general sense, I don't want to upset anyone there, but Venus and Virgo just isn't entirely relaxed. I mean, as a general principle, different people experience Venus and Virgo in different ways, but there can be a little bit of an issue with Venus and Virgo. And then Venus is in Virgo, then it moves into Libra. A massive change. Venus moves from being in a fallen state to being in its own sign. So Venus has a sudden blast of energy. Suddenly its condition improves massively. There is a point system. For example, William Lilly in Christian astrology in the 17th century, he has a point system. He gives a planet in its own sign +5, and he gives a planet which is fallen -4. So you move from -4 to +5. Okay, it may not be fully -4 if it's a daytime birth, because Venus does rule the earthy triplicity by day. So maybe we can say, well, it's perhaps you could argue that it's -1 by day, because you take -4 and then you add 3 for triplicity. So you could say -1 by day. But anyway, whether it's -1 or -4, you suddenly move into Libra and you get +5. But it's actually even better than that, because Libra is the exaltation of Saturn. Saturn is exalted in Libra. So Venus is in Saturn's exaltation sign. But Saturn is in Pisces. So Saturn is in the exaltation sign of Venus. So Venus moves into mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn, and so gets an extra +4 points for being kind of exalted by mutual reception. So it moves from being potentially -4 to being +9. So it is a massive change in Venus's condition. And so, we might feel this. It may be that it's easier to get on with people. It's perhaps a time when we can finally start making aesthetic choices. Especially now Mercury is direct. We can start making aesthetic choices about perhaps clothes or decoration. I suppose if we're inclined to have cosmetic surgery, I don't think that cosmetic surgery, for the sake of it, is always a good thing. Usually a good thing. I mean, people should be happy for how they are, but for sort of cosmetic surgery, maybe with certainly Venus in Libra in mutual reception to Saturn is better for having cosmetic surgery from being Venus in Virgo. So anything to do with beauty and what things look like and making the right judgment as far as beauty is concerned are favoured with Venus moving into Libra. So I think that is something very much to be celebrated here. And I should also say that Saturn is now very strong. That's a kind of a weird side product of Venus moving into Libra, because there's all this focus on Venus, but what about Saturn? Saturn is now strengthened. Saturn is now in mutual reception with Venus, so Saturn gets points for that. And so Saturn is actually now much stronger than Jupiter. It always was stronger than Jupiter. And so Saturn, Jupiter and Saturn are the sort of rulers of time. There's always that balance between Jupiter and Saturn. And sort of ironically, Venus moving into Libra make us people sort of more realistic and sort of more focused on the downside rather than the upside. There may actually be a strange negativity with Venus in Libra, not because of Venus in Libra, but because Saturn is now stronger than Jupiter. Now, from the electional perspective, I don't know whether this is going to work out. I'm not saying it is going to work out. You could say, if you're into American politics, that Jupiter rules the Republican Party and Saturn rules the Democrat Party. And that's something that some astrologers have pointed out. Now, that might not make much sense. I'm going to have a video about this, I hope, talking about this relationship between Jupiter and Saturn and the Democrat and Republican Party. So I'm not going to justify it here. But there is a very solid grounding and reasoning behind that idea that Jupiter rules the Republicans and Saturn rules the Democrats. I will justify that later in a different video. But if that were to be true, then the Democrats may benefit by Venus moving into Libra because it strengthens Saturn, and Jupiter is now in its detriment. And so there may be a period when the Democrats seem to be doing okay. Maybe, I don't know. But Venus doesn't stay in Libra forever. Just a reminder that Venus moves into Scorpio. Big change, Venus moving into Scorpio again. So Venus moves into Scorpio on the 23rd of September. So that's it's quite a short-term thing, well before the elections. So it just may say something about what's going to be happening in the next few weeks. But I don't know if it's as simple as that. I mean, logically, you'd expect the Democrats to be coming off the convention, that the convention bounce should be fading, but maybe the Democrats can benefit by the strength by the fact that Saturn is strengthened until it's in mutual reception with Venus until the 23rd. And I suppose that's Kamala, isn't it? Because you've got Venus being a woman, can represent a woman, I suppose, could represent Kamala Harris. But anyway, we'll have to see, and I'll discuss that in more detail in a different video. So that's the main thing. I should say the Venus, when it moves into Libra, it makes a trine to Pluto. And so Venus trine Pluto, Pluto kind of gives Venus a little bit of intensity, but it doesn't perhaps have in Libra. I mean, Venus in Libra does not have a reputation for being especially intense, but Venus trine Pluto, there could be a sense in which certain relationships do have an intensity to them, a power to them. And that might be something that we're dwelling on a little bit, that relationships are not straightforward things. If you get involved with someone, you have to deal with the consequences. On the other hand, Venus trine Pluto may say something about how we can be charismatic, and Venus trine Pluto could allow us to be very charismatic and perhaps a little bit manipulative, but it should be quite good for getting our way. Now, turning to the heliocentric picture, here we go, heliocentric picture, there it is. That's what things look like heliocentrically. And we can see the Earth is moving to a square of Jupiter. So with Earth square Jupiter, there may be a certain amount of excessiveness there that's coming up. I mean, that aspect between Earth and Jupiter is, it's going to be exact, sort of, today and tomorrow. So Earth square Jupiter, there's some inclination to exaggerate. So I think that is certainly possible. And we also have Mars sextile Saturn. So Mars sextile Saturn is perhaps about focused energy, how we focus our energy, and perhaps that sextile is useful. Mars sextile Saturn, perhaps we can take our energy and focus it on the things that need to be done. Though we shouldn't forget that, sextile, okay, it may be a good aspect, but the point that Mars and Saturn are in aspect may be all we need to be concerned about. And then if you actually have a closer look, you see that there's Mercury, heliocentric Mercury is in Aries, and it is because it's a fast mover. Mercury is making a conjunction to the Mars-Saturn midpoint heliocentrically, and perhaps that's something that we need to be aware of, and that may be about realism, coming down to earth. And perhaps that also links with the fact that Venus is moving into Libra, that Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. And I think it is a time when some of us are going to be more realistic than usual. And we must just make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, because Mercury on the Mars-Saturn midpoint can be overly negative. We can start to see things in their worst possible light, and I don't think that is a particularly good idea. Okay, that's the heliocentric picture, and I am now going to look at things from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecast for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, August the 29th, 2024. Aries. Aries, you are probably quite disciplined today. You're not in the mood for fireworks, for letting everyone know who you are and what you want. No, I think you're quieter than that. And I think that you may be able to benefit from the heliocentric sextile between Mars and Saturn. I know we can't see that Mars-Saturn sextile on the chart I've got up here because this is a geocentric chart, but from a heliocentric chart point of view, Mars sextile Saturn means that it's just a general atmosphere when, if you're an Aries, you can just focus on the things that need to be done, and you can do it in a sort of no-nonsense kind of way, and in the process, you can get, I think, very good results. I mean, other people might not see these results, but I think they're going to be very apparent. And so, don't be distracted, and don't feel you need attention. You do not need attention, and you don't need admiration. You don't need other people's respect. It's totally unimportant right now. You've kind of got your work cut out for you. You know what needs to be done, and really, that should be about it. Now, I think it is possible at the same time that you can actually have quite a powerful influence on other people if necessary. So the things you say, if you need to say them, I don't think you necessarily do need to say anything, but if you do find that you do need to say something or explain something, the words you use can be, I think, very compelling, and I think that people will, very much listen to what you say, and I think that your arguments will actually be very good. They will make a lot of sense, and you can be a little bit manipulative. That is true, but I think you're going to be manipulative in a way that is useful. Sometimes you have to be manipulative because some people just don't get it. They don't understand, and if you just tell it to them straight, that might not be enough. Okay, usually it might be enough, but today telling people straight may not be quite enough. You may have to consider who you're dealing with, and that way you can sort of relate to them in the right kind of way. Now, one of the big things going on today is Venus moving into Libra. And moving into Libra, again, it relates back to you and other people. Venus moving into Libra is such a big change. And it may be that some of the key people in your life are undergoing a process of change over the course of the day. And they are becoming stronger and more confident. And perhaps there's someone out there who you haven't taken particularly seriously, or you thought they were getting it wrong, or they had misunderstandings, but now they've changed. And they're probably becoming more reasonable, it's true, but in their own ways more powerful. I've talked about your power and your ability to manipulate, but manipulation is a two-way street. Venus is trine Pluto. Don't underestimate people. Just as you can manipulate, so it is the case that you can be manipulated. But again, manipulation isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes manipulation is necessary because we have to get people to understand things, and perhaps it's true, but someone has to get you to understand something. But really, Aries, fundamentally, you're not particularly in the mood for doing other people's bidding. You're actually quite set in your ways today, and I don't think that's anything to be ashamed about. Taurus, Venus moves into Libra, and from a Taurian perspective, that is very important because Venus is your ruling planet. And so in general, Taurus, I do think that is going to make you stronger. But not in a way that is necessarily particularly exciting. I think with Venus moving into Libra, Taurus, you're going to have a sense of responsibility. It doesn't sound like it, does it? Because Venus in Libra, sounds quite nice and up in the air, and Venus in Libra is an air sign. But we're talking about you, Taurus. We're not talking about other people. And also, Venus is in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. Now, that is good, that mutual reception with Saturn. That's great news. But Saturn is a serious planet. So with Venus moving into Libra, I do think you do become more serious, you become more disciplined, and some of the recent distractions and even delusions will start to fade away very quickly, actually. Venus has been making this opposition to Neptune, but the influence of that Neptune will fade, and you're going to be, I think, very down to earth, and this will be very clear in all your activities. And I think this down to earth approach will be appreciated, but some people might wonder what's going on, but you know what's going on. You know you have to do it your way. And at the same time, Venus is in Libra, which is quite a sociable sign. So with Venus in Libra, you'll be able to, I think, interact with people very well. I think your social skills are going to be good. And I think that you can impress people, but in a quiet kind of way. And I think you'll know what to say. And I don't think that you're going to rock the boat. And with the moon moving through Cancer, I think by and large you'll be able to put people at their ease. And so low profile socializing, dealing particularly with people you already get on with, people you already trust, can actually work very well. And yes, you are going to have some important things to say. You will choose your words carefully, I think, but the things you say will be very useful and will be very supportive. So maybe, Taurus, you are a good person to have around, but you do have to think about yourself and your needs. And Venus is actually trine Pluto. Now that Venus trine Pluto, I think it could really work very well for you. I mean, it does depend what you're doing, but if you're in a situation, Taurus, where you feel that you really need to be taken seriously, and you feel that you're not being taken seriously, and perhaps you've got an idea which you really want to wheel out, and in the past people hadn't been interested, now's perhaps the time to do it. And this may particularly apply to career and business, because that Venus trine Pluto, although it's in air signs, from a Taurian perspective, could be quite focused on status and getting things right and moving forward with your ambitions. Now, that Venus trine Pluto, remember, Pluto is on the verge of going back into Capricorn. But right now, as it stands, Pluto is in Aquarius. And with that Venus trine Pluto, I think that you do get a strong sense of what you want, almost an obsessive sense of what you want. And that may be especially the case in terms of work, career, business. You are very focused, and in the next day or two, perhaps you need to really take advantage of it. Don't hold back. Use the fact that Venus has just gone into Libra. I think it is a really quite powerful time, and I think that you can have an impact and you can make things happen very much on your terms. Gemini. So Gemini, you may feel that there's not a great deal that you want to do or need to do. You may just feel that things are fine as they are, and that there's no need to make any changes. And in a sense, you're probably right. Just let the world go by, and probably nothing bad will happen. But at the same time, there are perhaps things that you might want to consider. With Venus moving into Libra, Venus moves into Libra, yeah. And from a Gemini perspective, that's actually very good news, for a couple of reasons. So Venus is in an air sign. You are an air sign. So it's nice for Venus to be in one of your fellow air signs. Venus actually makes a trine to Pluto, and Pluto is in an air sign. So got Venus trine Pluto, and that trine between Venus and Pluto, Venus in Libra, trine Pluto in Aquarius, does hit your sign. It does hit Gemini. And I think it hits Gemini, I would have said, in quite a fortunate way. It's quite empowering, and I think that it allows you to express yourself, to be yourself, to tell the world, what kind of person you actually are, and I think that people will listen to you, and so that is certainly something to be pleased about. And at the same time, Venus, when it moves into Libra, makes a mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn, because Venus is in Saturn's sign of exaltation. Saturn is in Pisces, which is in Venus's sign of exaltation. So how does that impact you? So you've had Saturn going through Pisces, since the beginning of 2023. So Saturn going through Pisces for Geminis is a time to think about ambitions, what you're trying to achieve, what you're not achieving, what you'd like to be doing with your life. It needn't just be about work and your career, it can be about other things, the whole way in which you're trying to present yourself and move forward. And it has been on and off quite a big focus for you. And there have been times where you felt you were getting nowhere. There are other times when you were able to work very hard, grindingly hard. So that's something that's been perhaps happening. Interestingly, I started this YouTube channel at the beginning of 2023, because I'm a Gemini. So I started it February 2023, I think just before Saturn went into Pisces. And so perhaps, I haven't missed a single day. I've just been churning out these videos. So, it's been a very sort of grinding way, perhaps, and it has been increasingly hard work. But that is Saturn moving through Pisces. From a Gemini perspective, Pisces is a high-profile sign. And with Venus making this mutual reception to Saturn by exaltation, it's like you get some relief here. You're still very focused, but maybe things start to work. You get some favourable feedback about what you're doing. You get support for what you're doing with Venus in mutual reception to Saturn by exaltation. And also Venus moving into Libra it's really very creative and it's artistic, and you can create nice things, and these nice things can be applied to your whole structure of ambition. So being successful is not just about grinding hard work. I mean, sure, that's part of it, but it's also about bringing in the things that make you special, your creative genius, your creative talents, and you can bring it all together, particularly now that Venus has gone into Libra. Now, Venus does not stay in Libra forever. Venus stays in Libra, I think, until the 23rd of September. So you have got just over 3 weeks to take advantage of Venus in Libra in mutual reception to Saturn. And I think it can really allow you to really focus on what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing, and really bring to bear the full power of who you are and what makes you special. And today, that's something you can really concentrate on. But and right through until September the 23rd. But with today, Venus trine Pluto, there may be a sense of elevation, a sense of your own power, and a realization of what you could actually achieve if you actually gave yourself the chance. So today is useful, and the next three and a half weeks are useful. So really, Gemini, do make the most of it. Do not waste this opportunity. And of course, I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to myself as well, because I do have the sun in Gemini. Cancer. Moon continues moving through your sign. That's good. I mean, as I said yesterday, the moon works well in Cancer. It's a time when you just feel comfortable, and it's great to feel comfortable. We do live in difficult times, and so if you're feeling comfortable, Cancer, or perhaps more comfortable than usual, that is something that is, I would have said, very much to be welcomed. And at the same time, Cancer, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of dealing with the dark side, because the moon, it doesn't make many aspects. Okay, it makes a trine to Saturn, that's true, but it also makes a sextile to true black moon Lilith. and it's a mild influence. I mean, we often see true black moon Lilith as rather a dangerous, difficult energy, but I think in this case, Cancer, just gently engaging with the dark side, with some of your less pleasant thoughts, perhaps some of your thoughts that you're less proud of, might be useful. Also, perhaps considering other people's dark side. You know, perhaps you'll start to understand why people do what they're doing and why they're presenting themselves in a particular way. And you might get some real insight about it. And, you know, this insight could be very useful in terms of, you know, predicting what people are going to do next. And, you know, if someone's behavior has been confusing recently, or, you know, you haven't understood their motivations, you haven't understood their emotional motivations, then I think perhaps now you're actually able to really start, you know, you're able to start to really get to grips with it. And so don't be afraid of asking questions. Okay, that doesn't mean to say you have to ask people direct questions. You perhaps need to ask yourself questions and then look for answers and analyze people's behavior, think about people's behavior, feel people's behavior. I suppose that's what really matters. And, you know, it's always good to find things out about people, you know, provided you're discreet. And, you know, the moon today is trine Saturn, and moon trine Saturn, Cancer, it's quite good for relationships, I would have said. It allows you and another person to sort of be on the same level, to understand each other and relate to each other. You know, and if you understand someone's dark side, you know, so much the better. You know, we've all got dark sides. Just remember that. And, you know, with this moon sextile true black moon Lilith, it's all rather apparent. And in fact, Saturn is kind of opposition true black moon Lilith at the moment. So I haven't really checked to see how long this aspect is going to be in force for. But, you know, with Saturn opposition true black moon Lilith, you know, it is a time perhaps when some people around you are struggling with their own dark side, with their own unpleasantness, and you may actually find that, or you may not find directly, but it may be the case that some of the people you're having to deal with are kind of guilty about something. They're just feeling guilty. They know they've done something wrong, or they think they've done something wrong, and they do feel nervous about it. They don't want to discuss it. And then there may even be a certain sense of shame here. And I suppose shame can be something which interrupts relationships. It can do. For example, if you are ashamed of the way you treated someone, then you're going to sort of back off here. But if shame can be recognized, you know, there is the capacity here for forgiveness. And I think that might be a theme here, Cancer. You know, actually, Cancerians can be quite unforgiving. And there are many, many situations where Cancerians just are actually justified in being unforgiving. So it's nothing to be ashamed of to be unforgiving. But I suppose if you're in a situation where someone is clear about their own mistakes and are honest about their own mistakes, what they've done in the past, maybe there's scope for forgiveness. And perhaps even if you can't forgive someone right now, you can perhaps create a situation where forgiveness might be possible. And forgiveness, of course, as I've just been suggesting, does require complete honesty from the other person. Aside from that, we've got Venus moving into Libra. And Venus moving into Libra, I mean, is good, I suppose, because Libra is a cardinal sign. It's an important sign in the Cancer horoscope. Libra often relates to the home and things that are very precious to you, your foundations. And I suppose with Venus in Libra, the temptation or the tendency, I don't say temptation, but the tendency is, I think, to look towards your own home and perhaps look towards sort of beautifying your own home. You look around your home and it may be fine, but it could be better. You're very aware that it could be better, or that your living conditions could be better. That is certainly possible with Venus in Libra. And with Venus in Libra, well, Venus in Libra sort of realizes that living conditions could be better. But Venus is strong in Libra. Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. And so you can improve your living conditions, and you can make your living conditions more beautiful. And I suppose that's particularly the case if you're involved in real estate. If you're, a lot of Cancerians are involved in real estate. Cancerians regard property and private property as being very important, as something really worth holding on to. Of course, in America, they're really concerned about private property and property owners' rights. And we shouldn't forget that the USA has its sun in Cancer. But anyway, you're going to regard where you live as being important. You're going to want to live in the right place. And if where you're living is not perfect, you're going to want to change it. And that is absolutely reasonable. And I think you can get someone else's help or another organization's help, or whatever the situation, you can get help in order to improve your living conditions. The help is definitely available. Of course, that particularly applies if you're a Cancerian who is, I suppose, homeless, for example, or or temporarily might be homeless or whatever. If that's your situation, if you're on the other side of the tracks, if you're a very rich, prosperous Cancerian, still, when you look around your mansion, it's not going to be perfect. Your mansion could always be better, and you may be aware perhaps that there are certain aspects of how your mansion is constructed that is not perfect, and maybe you'll feel that you'll want to make some changes, and you can do it, and you can get support, and you can get the right help because of Venus being in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. So regardless of your living conditions, whether you're homeless, whether you're living in a mansion, it doesn't matter. This Venus in Libra is good for you, and it allows you to feel more comfortable in terms of where you are. Leo, you are feeling a little bit pressured at the moment. You just feel that maybe something just has to give. You're not quite sure what it is, maybe, but it still feels that something has to give, and that things are not perfect as they are, and that some kind of change, not even a change, I mean, it may be about a transformation is required. Something almost has to be broken down in order for you to make progress. I don't think that's necessarily true, though. And what we may be talking about here, Leo, is just a little bit of short-term frustration. And perhaps what you need to do is, try to find a way of talking about what's bothering you. And this shouldn't be a problem, because Mercury is now going stationary direct. Mercury is not retrograde anymore, and Mercury is moving through Leo. And so, rather than get annoyed about things, perhaps you need instead to talk about them. And I think that Mercury is making a nice sextile to Jupiter. Mercury in Leo, sextile Jupiter in Gemini. And so it's okay to talk about things. And, I think you'll get quite a good level of understanding. And at the same time, you don't want to make an exhibition of yourself. That is unnecessary. sometimes it's just best to just work through your frustrations and your tensions, perhaps with another person, but it needn't be a global issue. And this sense of feeling that you can't do everything you want to do is passing, and perhaps you just need to focus on what the benefits are, what's going on in a sort of a positive sense. Venus is moving into Libra. I think from your perspective, Venus moving into Libra, I would have thought that was a fortunate changeover. I mean, Venus has been in Virgo, and with Venus in Virgo, I mean, some Leos might have been a little bit preoccupied with money. Okay, still, the Sun is still in Virgo, so some Leos are still experiencing a certain financial preoccupation. Indeed, if you're feeling stressed out and something has to give, there may be a financial element to that. But with Venus moving into Libra, I do think that you do become, or can become, okay, maybe not today, but over the next few days, and remember Venus is moving through Libra until September the 23rd, that you can become just a little bit more relaxed, and you can become just a slightly nicer person. And it's not just you perhaps becoming a slightly nicer person, it's perhaps other people becoming slightly nicer people. And there may be people you want to engage with who can really be very useful to you, because Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. Saturn is ruler of your opposite sign, Aquarius. So that Venus mutual reception, Saturn by exaltation, could allow you to understand how other people can help you, or at least how they can provide assistance. And it's therefore not a time to underestimate anyone. People can be useful. Indeed, it might become clear how people can be useful today, because Moon is trine Saturn. Moon is in Cancer, so it's kind of quite a low-profile Moon from a Leo view, being in Cancer, the sign before Leo. But even if you're not a wild extrovert, you can still create links and connections. You don't have to act on these links and connections, but they are very much there. And perhaps what you're doing is you're preparing for the Moon to move into Leo, because tomorrow the Moon will be in Leo, and I think it's going to be a time when you are going to be more yourself tomorrow. I think today you're not quite yourself. You was kind of wanting to hold back, but still, I do want to point out that you shouldn't get too aggravated about the way things are going, and it does seem that people can be helpful if you just give them a chance. Virgo, it's a day when you might experience some kind of change, because Venus is moving out of your sign into Libra, and that might sound on the surface to be not a good thing. It's nice having Venus in Virgo. Venus is a planet of relationships, and you may have felt kind of comfortable with Venus in Virgo, but I do think that there were a few disadvantages of having Venus in Virgo. Venus in Virgo, it just might have been a time when you perhaps spent too long thinking about perhaps other people and your relationship with them and how things are working out, and you were perhaps just overly too preoccupied, and perhaps your relations with other people, they were there, but they may not always have felt fortunate. It may have felt that something was just not quite right. And with Venus moving into Libra, I think that there may be less preoccupation there may be less preoccupation with relationships. And that might actually be a good thing. And it might actually improve relationships if you're less preoccupied by them. Because, you can be more relaxed, and, maybe you can start to focus on other things. And also, you may realize that someone who you thought was a problem could actually be a bonus, could be a benefit in your life with Venus moving into Libra. So maybe the quantity of relationships may go down, but the quality of relationships actually could go up. And you can see people in a new way. Certain key people, you'll start to understand who they are and what they can do, and that's going to make you feel comfortable. And I think that you'll be in a better position to understand what impact people are having on your life. Certain people are having a negative impact and you don't need them anymore, then that's part of what Venus moving out of Virgo into Libra is about. But the people who really can have a positive impact can work in your favor. And I think that's represented by Saturn in Pisces, because Saturn has been in Pisces, your opposite sign, for a long time, since the beginning of 2023. So having to deal with other people, having to deal with their presence and their influence, always been an issue, hasn't always been much fun. But with Venus moving into Libra, Venus is in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn, and so Saturn is perhaps no longer a problem. Or if they are a problem, it's a problem you should be focusing on, because you're dealing with people who can do you good, who can be a force for good, rather than dragging you down. But maybe it's just a perception on your part. But there are other things going on. I don't think you have to be obsessed about just relationships. And Venus moving into Libra, in certain cases, can have an impact on Virgoans' finances. And I don't know whether that's relevant to you, but if it is relevant, Venus in Libra really should help you in terms of your finances, because from a Virgoan perspective, Libra is a very money-orientated sign, and Venus is incredibly well placed in Libra, being in mutual reception to Saturn. And so if there have been recent concerns about money, issues about money, feeling you don't have enough money, then it does seem that there may be a way to perhaps resolve the issue. And at the same time, you're going to find that people's attitude to your money is going to be more constructive. So if you need financial help, or you feel that something's owed to you, then with Venus moving into Libra, I think you can get it. And Venus isn't just moving into Libra; it's as I said, we've got this mutual reception of Saturn, and today Venus is making a trine to Pluto. I suppose a Venus trine Pluto is going to sort of feed into tomorrow as well. So that Venus trine Pluto, I think, Virgo, you're going to have a very clear sense of what is yours and what is owed to you. And also you'll have an idea about how you can get it. And it's not about using force. It's about using your skill and your understanding of people, your ability to be persistent and manipulative perhaps, but also your ability to be charming, because I think you can be charming. So overall, I think it is pretty fortunate, Venus moving into Libra, and it's something that I think that very much you should be welcoming. Libra. So, Libra, good news. Venus is moving into your sign. And that is a huge change. Venus really works so well in Libra. I mean, not only does Venus rule Libra, but Venus is in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. So Venus, your ruler, moves from a position of weakness to a position of great strength. And, I'm hoping that, you're going to be able to really take advantage of it. And so Venus, it stays in Libra until around September the 23rd. And so for the next 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, it's just really important that you're able to take advantage of it. Because you are now in a powerful position, and probably Venus is, over the next 3 weeks, Venus is going to be at its absolute maximum strength. If you look at Venus through the whole of the year, this is where Venus arguably is going to be strongest. So, do take advantage of this changeover. Consider, what would you like to happen? What would you like to achieve between now and September the 23rd? I mean, be realistic. Think about it. Write it down. What do you want? What do you want by let's say by the equinox, the autumnal equinox if you're in the northern hemisphere, I suppose the spring equinox if you're in the southern hemisphere, but I suppose everyone calls it the spring equinox. I don't know what people call the equinoxes in the southern hemisphere, but by the equinox, ask yourself, what would you like to achieve? The equinox is when the sun moves into your sign, but now we're talking about Venus moving into your sign. So it seems to me that your reasonable goals can be achieved. So think about those targets and really see what can be done to actually make them happen. And talking about today and maybe tomorrow to an extent, Venus is not just moving into Libra, but it's actually making a trine to Pluto. And that trine to Pluto, again, I think that is really, really powerful and fortunate for you. I think that Libra, you can make things happen. You might feel, oh, well, you need outside support. You can't do things on your own. What if this happened? What if that were to happen? But no, you can actually create big waves with this Venus trine Pluto. And do consider how you can change things. So, for example, if a situation or a person seems to be completely unmovable, then you can actually create some change there. You can create some movement. It's absolutely possible. It's something that you can do. So Libra, it's really very important that you don't doubt yourself. It's not just about the longer term, 3.5 weeks. It's about what you're doing today and tomorrow. So you've got to start somewhere, and it's also a time when the moon is moving through Cancer. Moon moving through Cancer is very much about your ambitions, what you want to do. So it's all coming together, or it should be coming together. And okay, if you miss the opportunity, it's not the end of the world. But just remember that the next time the moon goes into Cancer, in a month's time, Venus won't be in Libra anymore. It'll be in Scorpio. And so it won't be quite so good. So with the moon in Cancer, Venus in Libra, today and tomorrow, it's kind of lining up for you. So Thursday, Friday, try to pack in as much as possible. Really try to start the process of getting what you want, and do not allow negativity to get you down. Sure, I understand that. Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. Now that actually makes Venus even stronger, but that Venus mutual reception to Saturn gives you a seriousness which should be a bonus, but you don't want to interpret that seriousness as a reason why you can't do things. And yeah, sure, there may be some thoughts, some negative thoughts about, oh, well, if I were to do this, it might go wrong, or I might get myself into trouble. Of course, you shouldn't do anything that gets yourself into trouble, but you just might have unreasonable concerns about what might go wrong. And these concerns, really, they are fleeting. And I don't think you should take them too seriously, particularly if they are fantastic concerns. People do have fantastic concerns about what could go wrong. I think when these concerns are fantastic, absurd concerns. You know what they are, but you don't want to allow them to hold you up, because you don't want to spoil what really should be, a very good day, and what could turn out to be, the beginning, I suppose, as you move into the September, of being, a very good month, when, in a sense, the universe is dealing you a good hand, and you want to make the most of this good hand. You don't want to spoil it through negative thinking, or thinking that problems from the past will persist. So, overall, Libra, I think that there is a lot to look forward to. Scorpio, you are able to express yourself very well at the moment. Like yesterday, I think yesterday you were able to do this. You were able to really come over as a strong person with powerful opinions, and I think that by and large people were prepared to listen to you, because a lot of what you say does make a lot of sense. And if you provided you're simple about it, you don't make things too complicated, it all makes sense. And because you're making sense, it does mean that you're able to have an influence. And I think that your position is improved by the fact that just instinctively what you need to say to get someone's attention, to make someone concerned, to make someone excited. You know what to say. And I suppose, that is a reminder that Scorpios are good psychologists. You can really get to the bottom of things. And maybe you're helped by the fact that the moon is at the moment making a sextile to true black moon Lilith. So with the moon making a sextile to true black moon Lilith, that really does allow you to really understand things, to get to the bottom of things, to be able to just understand what is making people worried. And if you know what's making people worried, that gives you, I suppose, a special power. Of course, it's important, Scorpio, that you don't abuse that power, but you can certainly utilize it. And I think it's kind of strengthened by the fact that the moon is not just sextile black moon Lilith. The moon is also sextile Saturn, and that does give you a certain amount of gravitas. And I think that you perhaps will give the impression of just having some sort of access to higher knowledge. Now, if Scorpios perhaps have a weak point, sometimes Scorpios can have this weak point. Some Scorpios can be so wrapped up in themselves that they forget that there are other dramas going on. We always think about our own dramas, but what about other people's dramas? each person has their individual perspective, and things may actually be going on in people's lives that you're not fully aware of unless you pay attention to it. And what I'm thinking of in particular is the fact that Venus is moving into Libra, and Venus is Venus represents another person, I think, in your life. But it represents a person who is changing, maybe almost feels as if they're going into hibernation. Someone is perhaps appearing to back off, appearing to sort of fade into the background. But as they fade into the background, it's not like they're not doing anything. As they fade into the background, they are doing stuff. And people who fade into the background are fading into the background for a reason. They are gathering their strength. And that means, Scorpio, it's just very important not to underestimate people. Just because you can't see what they're doing, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. And so perhaps over the next few weeks, keep an eye on what people are doing. Okay, if they are friends, that's good. It's good that friendly elements are doing useful things, are strengthening themselves. But what about your enemies, your rivals? I mean, I know that enemies and rivals, that's a bit dramatic. We don't necessarily have enemies and rivals, but it's actually surprising that a lot of people do perceive themselves as having enemies and rivals. And so enemies and rivals may be getting stronger. If you're involved in any form of conflict and someone disappears, this person you're in a conflict situation with disappears, that could mean that they're gathering their strength. I mean, I don't want to make you paranoid though, but just consider that as a possibility. And nothing needs to be kept secret from you. You are in a position where you can know everything, well, within reason. So your ability to inquire, to find out what's happening behind the scenes without drawing attention to yourself, is actually very good at the moment. And so perhaps, Scorpio, that's something you need to focus on. Knowledge matters. Knowledge of all kinds matters, and it matters right now specifically to you, Scorpio. So really don't just assume that you can just do nothing, but you know enough. You never know enough. I mean, you know that you don't know enough. So by asking questions in a very sort of low profile kind of way, I think that you can benefit. And so that by the time Venus moves into Scorpio, Venus is currently moving into Libra, but by the time Venus goes into Scorpio, which is on the 23rd of September, around that date, you'll then be able to be sort of more forthcoming, and maybe some of your hard work and your inquiries will start to make sense. So that's about it. It's not a dramatic day, but at the same time it could be a little complicated, and you perhaps do have questions to ask about what precisely is your relationship to other people. Yeah, you know what they're thinking, you know what they're feeling. At least you should be able to know if you ask the right questions. So just because it's a complicated day doesn't mean that it can't be a productive one as well. Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, you're not really in the mood for doing sort of fantastic things. I think that in many respects you would prefer to be left to your own devices, at least in the first instance. Now, that's not the way it has to be, but that might be your initial preference as you try to work out what's happening today. And it's true, like yesterday, Sagittarius, that your emotions are on, I suppose, fine form, and you kind of understand what is happening, and you can feel it, and your intuition is strong, and also your sense of what is bad and what could go bad that's very finely tuned. So if you get a sense that something is going to go wrong, or something doesn't fit together, or that something is being hidden from you, then I think it's going to be very clear. You'll just know. And in that sense, I think you can very much trust your intuition. Though in fact, some Sagittarians may actually be able to benefit from a difficult situation. They may be able to benefit from someone else's bad actions. I don't quite know how that works, but you'll have to consider it in terms of your own life, whether or not that's relevant. So that's quite an interesting thing going on. Now, from an astrological point of view, the big event is Venus moving into Libra. So Venus has been in Virgo. Virgo is quite an ambitious, career-orientated sector of your chart. Venus moving into Libra does create a sort of a different vibe. Venus in Libra it's a very sociable place, a sociable sign for Venus to be in, and especially from a Sagittarian viewpoint, I think that your social skills are actually starting to improve now, and perhaps you haven't been feeling particularly sociable, at least in a relative sense, recently, but things are changing, and I think there are opportunities here to be meeting new people and strengthening existing relationships, but also for grounding certain relationships, because it's not just about Venus moving into Libra. I mean, I think that gives us a misleading impression to think, oh, Venus in Libra, Venus is a sort of a nice, uncomplicated, carefree planet in Libra, in its own sign, friendly, sociable, all that kind of stuff. But it's made a little more complicated by the fact that it's in mutual reception to Saturn. And Saturn is very grounding. And I'm thinking particularly of your chart. And so what it means is that there are going to be all sorts of people sort of floating around. The dog's upset. The dog is barking at someone walking their dog. But you don't mind that. I mean, Sagittarians generally like dogs, don't they? Particularly the late Sagittarians, because there is a view that Sagittarius, there's the human side to Sagittarius, which is the first part of the sign between between 0 Sagittarius and 15 Sagittarius, and then you've got the animal side of Sagittarius between 15 Sagittarius and the end of the sign. And I suppose that's a reminder that Sagittarius is the centaur, is it half man, half horse? So perhaps in terms of dogs and that kind of thing and animals, the dog's gone away now, so my dog should start calming down. But the last half of the sign, what will the last half of the sign be? So, for example, if you were, I'm distracted here, but the last half of the sign. So, if your Sagittarius is, if you're looking at this from a perspective of the sun in Sagittarius, you may be looking at it from a perspective of your ascendant in Sagittarius. But if you're a Sagittarius sun, the late Sagittarius is around after sort of around the 6th or the 7th of December. If you're born after Pearl Harbor Day, then you would be late Sagittarius, and that would be in the animal side. But anyway, the dog's gone away, and I've now got to rediscover my bearings. Okay, so what I was saying was that unfocused socializing is this woman. She smokes a cigarette. She's walking down the road. She walks down the road up to a certain point, and then she circles back, smokes in her trail. Anyway, she's gone. So the point I'm trying to make here, not very successfully, is that unfocused socializing is not something you should really be very impressed by. Just socializing for the sake of socializing is basically a waste of time. And I think that is going to be apparent because Venus is in mutual reception with Saturn. It's about taking someone you meet and integrating them into your life and grounding them, understanding what their role is, what their place in your life actually is. And yeah, that's about seeing what the use of someone is. And if you're just talking to someone for the sake of it and they're frivolous and they have nothing to offer, then why waste your time? And that seriousness comes because of Venus's mutual reception to Saturn. So every contact you have needs to be grounded. It needs to be part of your social universe and also part of who you are. And if someone doesn't fit, if there's no way you can fit someone into your way of being, maybe you just don't need to waste time with them, because if you're wasting time with one person, you could be spending that time with another person who could be more useful, who you really could integrate into your life, and they could actually become part of your grounding and part of your security. Capricorn. Good news, Capricorn. Venus is moving into Libra. Really, that's really good news. I think that is something, Capricorn, that you should welcome. I have felt a bit guilty, Capricorn, because I've sort of felt, Capricorn, that when I've been doing your readings, actually for some time, I felt I've been a little too negative somehow. I haven't been much fun. But I'm not a fun person. I suppose I need to say that. But I do feel that I have been somewhat negative, and that I haven't really been focusing perhaps on the joy of life. But Venus moving into Libra for you is really fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant news. And, it's brilliant news on a number of levels. Libra is a very important sign for Capricorn. It's a sign relating to success and your ambitions and what you want to achieve and your status and how you present yourself in the world and your ego development. So it's a good sign. It's an important sign. And then Venus moves into Libra, and Venus rules Libra. So you should have a very clear sense of where you want to go, how you want to get it, what support is available. Now, that's the first point to make. The second point is that Libra is the sign in which Saturn, your ruler, is exalted. So Venus has a special connection with Saturn, your ruler now. So Venus is in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. And so Venus stays in Libra. And of course, Saturn will be staying in Pisces until next year, I think. So Venus stays in Libra until September the 23rd. So Capricorn, between now and September the 23rd, really make sure you give it all you've got, because it's a time, Capricorn, where I think that things can really start to move your way and you can make things happen. And if you have felt that, in the past things hadn't been moving, that things were too serious, that you had insurmountable obstacles, you can forget all that. Now's your chance. And so I really hope, Capricorn, that you are able to really take advantage of it. And you are a sensible Capricorn. You understand what's possible, and so think about what could be possible between now and say September the 23rd, between the equinox, because it can be, provided it's reasonable. You don't want to be unreasonable. You don't want to have crazy ambitions, but you're a Capricorn. You don't have crazy ambitions, do you? So I think there's really a lot there to be very positive about. And in terms of other things going on, Moon is in Cancer today. We've got Venus moving into its own sign. We've got Moon in Cancer in its own sign, and Moon is making a trine to Saturn today. So Moon trine Saturn, that does suggest to me that you can get on with people very well, and you can be a warm and welcoming but serious person. And at the same time, you are prepared to understand people's weaknesses. You do understand people's weaknesses, and you can see where people are going wrong, and you can also see people's unpleasantness. But by seeing someone's unpleasantness, you get further insights. That's because Saturn is opposition true black moon Lilith, and the moon is trine Saturn, and the moon is sextile true black moon Lilith. So I don't think that is a problem. I mean, I think you'll be able to take people as they are in the complete multiplicity of who they are, and you'll be able to accept people as whole people. And because you can accept people as whole people, their good sides and their bad sides, you can bring it all together. I think that means, Capricorn, that that does make you tolerant, but not naive. Not at all naive. You understand the darkness. You do understand it, and that certainly shouldn't take away from the fact that today it looks really good, and not just today looks really good. I think that between now and September the 23rd, it's really a time of opportunity for you, Capricorn. So please do make the most of it. Aquarius, Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. That's a big deal. So Saturn rules Aquarius. It's not Uranus, it's Saturn. Saturn rules Aquarius. It always has ruled Aquarius. Uranus got discovered at the end of the 18th century, and it's not a planet that we can, generally speaking, see with the naked eye. And Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, and Saturn is in Pisces, and it's been in Pisces since the beginning of 2023. And Saturn is in the exaltation sign of Venus, and Venus is now in Libra, which is the exaltation sign of Saturn. So Venus and Saturn are in mutual reception, and that does strengthen you. I'm quite certain about that. You may have felt at times that you weren't in an especially strong position. You were always perhaps aware that things could be better, that you had vulnerabilities, and you may have felt this since the beginning of 2023. Some of your current concerns since the beginning of 2023 might have been financial. That's true. And now we've got Venus moving into Libra. And so with Venus moving into Libra, I do think that you start to feel stronger. You start to feel better able to deal with the challenges confronting you. I mean, let's not be negative. Why should any challenges be confronting you? It's just easy to bring those words together. Challenges confronting you. I don't want to repeat myself here, but maybe there are no challenges. But if anything has been bothering you, then with Venus moving into making a mutual reception to Saturn, help is at hand, and you're feeling stronger and more competent, and also I think actually more sort of open-minded. I mean, I understand you have your views, which your views are very important to you, but Venus moving into Libra gives you access to new views, new ways of looking at the world, perhaps things you hadn't thought about. And when you start to think about how you see the world, then that might change how you present yourself. And Venus is, Venus, when it moves into Libra, it does make a trine to Pluto. So Pluto, of course, is still in Aquarius, 0 degrees, 3 minutes Aquarius, about to move back into Capricorn, very, very close to moving back into Capricorn. But Venus trine Pluto, I think, gives you a strong, does make you powerful and allows you to present yourself as a really quite interesting person. Someone who understands the world. You know you don't understand the world 100%. That's why you know that there are more things out there. There are more things to be discovered, and you're very aware that there are more things to be discovered. But so you can get that balance right, even if you're unsure of your own opinions at times. You can still come over as a person with strong opinions who can be, I think, taken seriously. So yeah, I do think you will be taken seriously, and today you're not going to do anything stupid. You do actually have a strong sense of what needs to be done, and I think that's helped by the fact that the moon is making a trine to Saturn, and that moon trine Saturn, from an organizational point of view, looks good, looks really useful, and there are things you can get together. Perhaps something's been a little bit of a mess, or you hadn't really understood it, and you can just get it together, and that could have benefits in several areas. Could have financial benefits as well. Oh, and I should say that this Venus mutual reception Saturn, while we're talking about money, if appropriate, could be very useful financially. So over the next few weeks, if there's anything bothering you about money, or if you're feeling that something hasn't been resolved financially, then I think that you might be able to find some resolution over the next few weeks. And I think that you should perhaps, if necessary, you could be looking for financial opportunities, perhaps in strange places. Perhaps, if appropriate, you may find ways of making money or getting money which relate to things happening far away, maybe hundreds of miles away, maybe even thousands of miles away. I don't know what that means, but I suppose also with the internet, there's always ways of making money on the internet, or so we're told. I'm not necessarily sure that's necessarily the case, but so we're told. If we believe that, then maybe it's something online. I don't know, but if money is an issue, then I think that this Venus moving into Libra, it could be very useful for you. Pisces. So Pisces, I suppose the big news today, and or it might happen tomorrow, depends, is Venus moving into Libra. And Venus moving into Libra, in some respects, makes you a little more intense. And I know that we don't normally associate Venus in Libra with being intense, do we? I mean, Venus in Libra is supposed to be quite a sort of a friendly, sociable, surface level kind of thing. That's how we normally associate Venus in Libra. But, we're talking about you. And I would have said that in your case, Venus in Libra does make you more serious, more intense. And this is particularly the case because Venus is in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. And so Saturn is in Pisces. So Saturn's been moving through Pisces for a long time. Getting on for over 18 months, I think. Went in, I think, in March 2023. So you've had Saturn moving through Pisces, has made you more of a serious person, I think, has made you more grounded, has made you more aware of your responsibilities. And then Venus moves into Libra, and that actually strengthens Saturn, and that makes you more aware of your responsibilities. And you are aware that you live in a serious world, but also you are in a strong position. Venus, I know it rules Taurus and Libra, but it has an affinity with Venus has an affinity with Pisces because Venus is exalted in Pisces. It's not quite your ruler because Jupiter's the ruler of Pisces, but Venus is kind of an exaltation ruler of Pisces. And so, looking at Venus is always an important thing to do. And so with Venus moving into Libra, I think that you're more serious, you're more focused, and you have sort of a better sense of who you are and your limitations. But it's not really about limitations. I mean, you're certainly into boundaries, that's true, because Saturn is in Pisces, you're certainly aware of your boundaries. But I suppose with Venus moving into a Libra, you're aware of what you can do within your boundaries. Because in many respects, the secret to real success is understanding your boundaries. It's not trying to do things you can't do, not trying to do things that someone else can do better than you. It's doing things that only you can do, and you can do them really well. And I think you can do them really well. And you're helped also by the fact that the moon is in Cancer at the moment. The moon is in Cancer, is well placed in Cancer, and the moon is making a trine to Saturn. And moon in Cancer is about who you are, what you can do, what makes you different from other people. And so it trines Saturn, so you can really mark yourself out as someone who has got something very unique to offer. And Venus moving through Libra, remember Venus will be in Libra until September the 23rd or around that date. And so that is a time when you really can consider what you have got to offer, and you should be able to cover a lot of ground. So I'm actually, Pisces, I'm really quite optimistic about the next few weeks. Of course, as usual, nothing happens unless you actually put in the effort, but I think you are putting the effort, and if you do make the effort, then Pisces, I think there is a considerable cause for optimism. Okay, that's it for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first and only hexagram I got was number 16, which is contentment. This is how Greg Winkup, in his book on I Ching, translates it. In the Wilhelm translation, it's described as enthusiasm. I think contentment is more appropriate. And we know this hexagram does crop up every now and then. And contentment is perhaps about complacency. We can be enthusiastic as well. Enthusiasm on its own is, of course, a waste of time. We can be enthusiastic about what's happening. We can be enthusiastic about, Venus being in Libra, in mutual reception to Saturn by exaltation. We can be enthusiastic about it, but so what? Enthusiasm on its own gets us nowhere. And seeing it in terms of contentment, it's like, it's good enough. We're happy with the way things are. Things might not be perfect, but they're okay. It's very much focused on the present. You know, we're always told, aren't we, we're supposed to live in the present. That we are happiest when we are living in the present, when we are not worrying about the future, when we're not worrying about the past. But I think you can take this too far, can't you? I mean, if you are in a first class cabin on the Titanic at the moment the Titanic hits the iceberg, you could say, well, why should you actually leave the why should you leave the Titanic? Why should you leave your comfortable cabin? Because your cabin is fine. You've got this wonderful bed, it's opulent. You know, think about the present. That's what we're told. Sure, in a few hours' time, the Titanic will sink and it will descend into the Atlantic Ocean. But think about the present. That's what matters, isn't it? And it's the same, you know, with contentment. You were just content with the way things are. Things could be worse, could be better, but they're fine. And even if we look ahead and we see that something is not quite right on the horizon, you know, we see something bad perhaps coming in the horizon, it's still, we don't really need to worry about this. Let's just enjoy things as they are. But this is, of course, not the right approach, is it? Contentment is about complacency. Or perhaps we're just being enthusiastic about something with no basis. Things are changing, and maybe things are not changing for the better. And if we're not preparing for the future, we really could get ourselves into trouble here. And I mean, I don't know how this relates to the astrology. I've just mentioned that Venus is moving into Libra, but maybe it does, because Venus is moving into Libra, which is nice. Very content, Venus moving into Libra. But Venus is in mutual reception to Saturn. We mustn't forget about Saturn. Venus moving into Libra has actually made Saturn stronger. Saturn, the forces of discipline and responsibility, having to face reality, have been made stronger by Venus moving into Libra because of this mutual reception by exaltation. So I think the advice is quite simple. We must not be complacent. Sure, we can be content. There's nothing wrong with being content, but we must realize that this is not going to last forever. And things will change. Things are unlikely to change for the better. That's the issue. Now, I'm not really talking about you personally here. I think I'm probably talking about the world out there, the society we're living in. And all of us need to be preparing for what's happening in the world in which we live. You know, I mean, some places are less stable than other places. I suppose, you know, I'm in the United States. I endlessly criticize the United States, but reality is the United States is a lot more stable than most other places in the world. So many countries in Europe. So, you know, I perhaps should be counting my blessings here. But it does depend on your situation. And do look at the newspapers or whatever, however you get your news. Look at the way things are going. I mean, don't be paranoid, but do be realistic. And you know, you do not want to get into this situation where where you're having fun and dancing on a precipice, where destruction is kind of inevitable. We don't want to be in that situation. You needn't be in that situation. So I think it is important to be prepared. And you know, we do get some broader idea about what contentment actually means by looking at the nuclear hexagram. So this would be now, one thing I should point out, that I have made a little bit of a mistake here, in that I have actually shown you the wrong hexagram. So let me just fix that for a moment. I mean, I got the hexagram wrong, but I've been displaying the wrong hexagram. So let me just fix that. That is not good. There it is. Sorry about that. That's what the hexagram should look like. So there's contentment, enthusiasm. You've got the three. At the bottom, you've got three broken lines. Then the fourth line from the bottom is a unbroken line, and then you've got two broken lines. So you've got just the fourth line, which is unbroken. So this hexagram does have a nuclear hexagram. It's a hexagram which is underlying it, and the nuclear hexagram for this is hexagram number 39. So this just kind of tells us what is underlying contentment, and so it's hexagram 39, which is obstruction. So obstruction is about actually hitting an obstacle. It can be that we just can't move any further. We are actually stuck. If we go forward, we'll get ourselves into trouble. If we can go backwards, that might be okay, but we are stuck where we are. And perhaps that's the underlying picture of this hexagram contentment or enthusiasm. We're trying to pretend that everything is fine when it's not fine at all. And we are stuck, and we're pretending we're not stuck. And we're being enthusiastic in a way that is totally out of sync with reality. So yeah, I think it's just important to be real about it, to be very real about it, and to start preparing, because things in the world are unlikely to get much better. I'm sorry to be so negative, but I mean, I should say that this is a locked hexagram. It doesn't move anywhere. And so because it's a locked hexagram, that might suggest that it's not particularly important. It's just, you get a general impression, but it's not necessarily going to completely mark what the day is all about. So I don't want to scare you. I'm just saying, there's no harm in being prepared, is there? And there's no real room for complacency for any of us. Okay, that's the I Ching. And now I want to look at Venus moving through Libra. What does it mean for Venus to be in Libra? So Venus works well in Libra as a general principle. Venus is in its own sign. So, when Venus is in Libra, we can perhaps expect things to work well. We can expect relationships to work well in particular, because Venus is the planet of relationships. And so if we would think logically, if you have Venus in Libra, that your social skills are going to be good, that you will have a good understanding of social balance, and you will know how to behave, and at the same time you'll perhaps know how to misbehave, because Libra does have a strong sense of the balance underlying everything. There is that broad sense of harmony, and we know how to promote that harmony, but at the same time we also know how to disrupt that harmony. And so that might be how Venus in Libra works. And with Venus, we have to remember that it is a female planet. And so in a male horoscope, it perhaps is more likely to be projected. You have Venus in Libra, but, that's not exactly who you are if you're a man with Venus in Libra. And so you might project it. You might project it onto partners, wives, the mother, the women in your life. Now, if you're a woman with Venus in Libra, it's less likely to be projected. It's going to be likely to be more about who you are. This is the real you. And so, looking at the attributes of Venus in Libra, balance, how things are balanced, making sure everything is properly balanced, behaving in a sort of a harmonious kind of way. That might be easier if you are a woman with Venus in Libra. If you're a man with Venus in Libra, not necessarily the case. So those are some general thoughts about Venus in Libra. And of course, at the moment, we've got Venuses in mutual reception with Saturn, and so, which is a reminder, you need to, you can never really look at anything in astrology in isolation. So if you're looking at someone's chart and you see Venus in Libra, you've got to look at what gender they are. It's going to work differently for a man and a woman, and you've got to look at what aspects Venus in Libra makes, and you've got to look at the overall chart before really understanding what it actually means, because on its own, Venus in Libra is pretty generic. Okay, so let's look at some people who have Venus in Libra, and I hope you don't mind, but I want to start with my grandfather again. Obviously I've talked about my grandfather before, but I just noticed he had Venus in Libra, and I think I had some insights about Venus in Libra in his chart, which might be sort of generally useful. So, and it also helps me understand my grandfather. So I hope you'll bear with me on this. So, turning to my grandfather, so my grandfather is here. So my grandfather was born on August the 12th, 1890. I've talked about him before. And there's my grandfather's Venus at 1 degrees 48 Libra. So my grandfather is kind of having his Venus return, and I'm talking about his chart, which I suppose is kind of reasonable. So what does that mean? Now, I've already talked about my grandfather's chart, and I've talked about some of the negative aspects of my grandfather's chart. So remember, with my grandfather, he was a priest. He didn't fight during the First World War, even though he was of that generation. His younger brother was killed during the First World War. He was completely traumatized, as far as I can understand, by this death, and I suspect there was a huge sense of guilt. He was just training to be a priest, I think he was the early stages of being a priest. I think he was working in some vicarage maybe in Cambridgeshire or somewhere. I think he'd finished his training, but still. So when he was around 25 years old, his brother was killed, or just before. And so you can see the drama here. He has Mars-Saturn square, and he's got Mars opposition Neptune. There's a Neptune-Pluto conjunction, which marked the First World War generation. And there it is, opposition Mars and square Saturn. And so there is that drama there, and that tragedy there. And I was thinking about that Mars-Saturn square, the incredible fear of Mars and Saturn. And, in terms of the I Ching, I was just talking about sort of complacency and the idea that one cannot be complacent. And I just remembered I was reading his diaries. He wrote these diaries. I haven't got access to them, but he was talking about 1945, just after the Second World War. And he wrote these diaries just after it had been announced that the Labour Party had won this election in Britain. This Labour Party, Socialist Party, had won this huge majority, completely unexpected. Churchill was out of office, and I was reading his diaries, and his diaries were like absolute terror. He basically thought, as far as I could see, that the KGB or the secret police were about to knock on his door and drag him away. I mean, that was what he thought. He thought it was the end of civilization as he saw it. I mean, he was presumably a conservative voter, and he had a conservative view of the world. And that Mars-Saturn, that fear of just Britain about to be a communist state and all that came with it, and particularly for someone who was a priest, it was really, I mean, of course he was being unreasonable, but I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, he has Venus trine, not just Venus in Libra, but Venus trine Jupiter. So this gives a completely different side to his personality. So I've talked about all the trauma of losing his brother, and you can see how he was someone who could be afraid of things happening, like the Labour Party winning an election. But he was actually, as far as I understand, he was a bon viveur. He enjoyed the good things in life, and in his own way, he was quite lazy. I mean, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. And he was quite relaxed with Venus in Libra, trine Jupiter. He didn't want to upset people. And he, for example, in the 1960s, there was this television series. It was called The Forsyte Saga, and it was really big, really huge. It was some costume drama. I don't know really anything about it, but it was a costume drama. Everyone watched the Forsyte Saga, and it was on Sundays. And the problem was that when he had, there would be evensong, there would be a church service in the evening, and he was afraid that people might not turn up to church if they were going to miss the Forsyte Saga. So he would deliberately cut his services short so that people could go home and get to watch their TV show, this Forsyte Saga. And I don't think he was alone. I think there were priests like him all over the country, cutting their services short so that people could watch the Forsyte Saga. But that is very much in accordance with Venus in Libra, doing what the congregation want. Him not projecting his Venus trine Jupiter. And Venus trine Jupiter is a little bit lazy, and he really enjoyed good food. He went to a very good university. He went to Trinity College, Cambridge. But I did actually find out that he actually got a third-class degree in classics. So I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming a third-class degree. It's like getting it's like getting a grade point average of, say, 2.5 or something like that in an American equivalent. That gives the impression he didn't work too hard on it. So he got a third-class degree. I mean, he was good at classics, but he liked to travel. And, that's Venus in Libra trine Jupiter. He did like to travel. Even when in the 60s, he would travel. He went on cruises. He went to Italy. He would like to visit monasteries. He pointed out, when he went to monasteries, he could. He didn't know any Italian, but that was fine because he could talk to the monks in Latin. So that was his life. So I think that Venus trine Jupiter, in terms of my grandfather, provides a tonic to the trauma in his life, and it provides an alternative way of being. And you can perhaps understand how that Venus trine Jupiter might have been some kind of escape mechanism for him, to deal, as a distraction from the tragedy of his brother's death. And I just do think that these tragedies just go on. I mean, I think it is a whole generation traumatized. Of course, there are millions of people across Europe, in France and Germany and the UK and Australia and Canada, who had these horrendous experiences during the First World War. Even if they weren't there themselves, it did scar them. And so those are a few thoughts about his Venus in Libra. So let's look at someone else with Venus in Libra, someone you certainly will have heard of if you're in the UK. And there is David Cameron. So David Cameron was British Prime Minister from 2010 to 2016. And I think that David Cameron actually had a lazy streak. He wasn't fully in control of his brief, maybe. He just went... He went from one thing to another. He enjoyed the good things in life. He enjoyed the European circuit. You can see him with Obama and the heads of state of Europe, and he liked that. He enjoyed that life, and he wanted to be everyone's friend. I think they said about David Cameron, he was when people mocked him by saying he was sort of "call me Dave," that kind of thing, and not really being able to put up with real crisis. So, for example, after the Brexit referendum, when Britain voted to leave the European Union, he just promptly resigned. That is Venus in Libra. Venus in Libra doesn't want things to be too complicated, and if things do get too complicated, Venus in Libra can just leaves. This is too complicated for me. I'm not going to hang around and deal with Britain voting in a way I didn't want them to vote. What else can I do? So I think that does suggest some laziness with Venus in Libra, even verging on cowardice in his case, I would have said. But still, he had Moon sextile Venus. So as a politician, as a politician who got elected, he was actually quite successful. He did well in the 2010 election. He surprisingly got an absolute majority for Tories in the 2015 election. So electorally, he was a 2 times winner, and I think for a long time the public liked him. Moon conjunct Jupiter, he was lucky, but so I think you can see how Venus, perhaps in his case, is working. I don't know whether he's projecting his Venus, whether that says anything about his wife. What's her name? Samantha. I don't know. That's not the point, is it? But his Venus is working well, but up to a point. But when Venus in Libra has to face a real crisis, like Britain voting to leave the EU, the whole thing just collapses. So someone else with Venus in Libra, and I want to kind of illustrate the point here that Venus in Libra is not always kind of apparent. Okay, I know people don't watch his films anymore, but Charles Bronson. So Charles Bronson, if you don't know about Charles Bronson, he used to be a major Hollywood star. He was famous for his Death Wish films. Death Wish 1, he did about 5 Death Wish films. His Death Wish 1 was a major hit. It was about, he played a vigilante, killing people, killing criminals in a New York subway system in the 1970s. And a lot of his films were about violence. He was known to be a hard man. Or at least that was the impression he got. And he on stage and off stage as well, because he was in The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape, and he was in all of them. But he was quite gritty, and I think in German they called him the Meisterkiller. Is that right? The Master Killer. You can even see videos on. Someone made a compilation video of the Death Wish films, where he counted how many people he killed during the Death Wish films, and so that kind of persona as a vigilante, you've got the sun in Scorpio, that sort of completely fits it. Yet he's got Venus in Libra. How does that work? Now, you might say that says nothing about him. It may be about the women in his life, the women he marries, and he married Jill Allen, didn't he? And then she died of cancer. But that was a major thing in his life. I think he sort of he stole her, didn't he, from David McCallum? Was she married to? She was married to David McCallum, but Charles Bronson, really was obsessed with her. So maybe that's how Venus in Libra works. But Venus in Libra, he came from a very tough background, yet he was able to be successful as an actor. And in fact, I think he was successful in Europe before he became successful in the United States. So maybe that's Venus in Libra as being a planet relating to the arts and being able to interact with people. And he's got Venus conjunct the North Node. He's dead now, but Venus in Libra conjunct the North Node, and fairly close to a conjunction of Jupiter. So, maybe that's how we're seeing that Venus work. We don't see it directly, so consider that possibility, particularly in a male chart when you see Venus in Libra, that it may be working in a slightly hidden way, and the benefits may nonetheless be very real. And with Charles Bronson, he must have done something right. If he came from a dirt poor background. I think he was a gunner in the Second World War, and was he a rear gunner in a B-17 or something like that? And it came from a very gritty, I think, coal mining environment, but he was still able to become a Hollywood star. And perhaps it was Venus in Libra that attracted him to the arts, and allowed people to like him, and allowed him to become a star. So someone else who you wouldn't necessarily think was naturally Venus in Libra is George Galloway. So George Galloway is quite a hard, sort of gritty kind of person, but very charismatic. And so there you might have his Venus in Libra. On the surface, he would appear to be someone who is not in the business of making friends. He's certainly not in the business of creating, harmony, just going with the flow. Not at all. He calls people out. He called people out after the Gulf War. As far as he's concerned, what's happening in Gaza is genocide. That's his point of view. I'm not saying that is what's happening. I trying to be open-minded about it. But he has strong feelings about justice. Now, there may be something about there. Maybe we need to see Venus in Libra in a different way. Venus in Libra could be the scales of justice. That is possible. So perhaps if we take Venus literally about justice, Venus in Libra would be perhaps regarding justice as being very important, and it's not perhaps something that needs to be or should be compromised. And so that may be part of it. But Venus in Libra, one would have to perhaps also look at his private life, who he's married to, the women in his life. So that might be how one also might want to look at how Libra is working. And in terms of women with Venus in Libra, Janet Yellen has Venus in Libra. I don't know her time of birth. So that's owned. Now, Janet Yellen with Venus in Libra, perhaps she sort of fits in. She's trying to balance everything. That might be how it works. She's trying to sort of balance the books. If she's an economist, she's trying to make everything work. And she's Treasury Secretary, and she used to be chairman of the Federal Reserve. So perhaps what's happening is Janet Yellen, she wants to be liked, and she knows how to be liked, and she knows how to make powerful connections. And so that is perhaps how she's able to be so successful, I suppose, politically now. She's Treasury Secretary. She's just had her 78th birthday, but still, she has this incredibly powerful position, and many people revere her as an economist. Other people do not revere her so much. But Venus in Libra, she's just playing a balancing game. But the problem with Venus in Libra is at some stage the balancing game has to end, as we saw with David Cameron after Brexit. What happens when there's a real crisis? What happens when things really fall apart? I don't think Venus in Libra, in her case, could really handle it. I think that would be perhaps a problem. Now, if you want to see real archetypal Venus in Libra, then you could go to Princess Grace of Monaco, Grace Kelly. So Grace Kelly, this sort of iconic actress who married, Prince Rainier of Monaco, and it's sort of the sort of epitome of what sort of 50s beauty, has Venus in Libra. And even by the name Grace Kelly, that's Venus in Libra, just seems to be sort of absolutely perfect. I don't want to look at her chart in detail. And okay, going back to a few men with Venus in Libra, and the idea that Venus in Libra might be projected is, of course, there's Prince Harry. Prince Harry has Venus in Libra. So with Prince Harry, there's his Venus in Libra. Venus at 17 Libra. So to what extent does he use Venus in Libra? One shouldn't forget. I think I get Venus in Libra here. This is very interesting. Venus in Libra is sociable and charismatic. Look, he's got Venus sextile Mars. It's attractive and charismatic, and it's likable. And for a long time, Prince Harry was, one of the most popular members of the royal family. And he did the Invictus Games, and he sort of had a sense of humour and a sense of fun that maybe William didn't have, and it was all working well. And there's his Venus in Libra. Venus in Libra at the top of the chart. Okay, it might be on the 9th house cusp, but it's sextile Mars. And then what went wrong? You see, Venus in Libra was fine, provided he owned it. It was his Venus in Libra. But the moment the projection happened, that's when the problems started. And so it's kind of not surprising that the moment he met and married Meghan, Venus in Libra kind of disappeared. That might be how it works. So if turning to Meghan, you see, Meghan has her Pluto at 21 Libra conjunct his Venus. So maybe she was stealing his Venus, taking it from him, became her. And also, she has Moon in Libra. And so, sure, the Moon is a long way from Harry's Venus, but it's still Moon in Libra. You still have that Libra energy. So the moment Harry dumped his Venus in Libra, onto Meghan, he kind of lost his Venus. So you could say that Meghan stole his Venus, and it's no longer part of who he is. And so now we see a somewhat surly, hostile man who's got chips on his shoulder, and basically he's lost his Venus in Libra. The public no longer like him anymore. And I'm not saying that's always going to happen with projection, but I think in this case, it does seem to work very well. And we should not forget that Harry has had a Venus-Mars sextile in his chart. And Meghan also has a Venus-Mars sextile in her chart. So he projected that whole complex, Venus sextile Mars. He went for a woman who also had Venus sextile Mars. But yeah, she stole his Venus. She stole his charisma. She stole his likableness. So I think that could be how that Venus in Libra is working. Okay. someone else, another woman with Venus in Libra is Ursula von der Leyen. She's got Venus in Libra, and that's hers. It's not projected. I suppose you have to say her Venus in Libra is working very well. She's got Venus sextile Mars. So Venus in Libra, she's not projecting it. She can be all things to all people. People like her. People think she, people trust her, and she sort of climbs up the political ladder. I mean, clearly she's been totally over promoted. I just get that impression. I don't think that she's politically and talented as well. Obviously she is politically talented because she's got Venus in Libra, but I don't think she has the ability that some people think she has. She's gone way too high as it stands. But anyway, Venus in Libra has really helped her, and it's sextile trine Mars, and so it's been very useful for her in terms of managing German and European politics and getting to this exalted position that she's found herself in. And I suppose in the end, probably many of us are going to have to suffer the consequences of her political skills. And that's it. I suppose it's political skills. I think that's perhaps what we need to think about in terms of Ursula von der Leyen. And sort of another German with Venus in Libra is Nazi German propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. So Joseph Goebbels was a Scorpio and Sun at 6 degrees Scorpio, but he had Venus in Libra, and maybe we need to start to rethink Venus in Libra. We think about Venus as a planet of love, and it's not just about that. It's also, I think, in some senses, it's a planet of victory, and it's the planet of, I don't know. I think there is some sense in which we've completely missed the meaning of Venus. I really do think that Venus is about someone who is successful and is quite wrapped up in their own power. Maybe we even saw that with George Galloway. Charismatic, but charismatic in a sense that is not necessarily compromising. It's not the charisma that comes from making compromises with people. It can be a very single-minded charisma, and we're certainly seeing that with Joseph Goebbels. That he had to make some accommodations to get to where he was. Venus in Libra had a clear sense of what he needed to do to survive politically. He was on the left wing of the Nazi Party. The more socialist wing of the Nazi Party, the side of the Nazi Party that was less anti-Semitic originally. I think he was from the sort of Ruhr Nazi Party, not the sort of more conservative right-wing side of the Nazi Party. But then when Hitler took power, took real control, I think there was a moment, when Hitler really took control of the party, when Joseph Goebbels had to make a decision, and he just went and visited Hitler and just completely surrendered, and that whole left side of the Nazi Party collapsed, and so he became, as we know, a propaganda minister. And Venus in Libra, he was an effective propaganda minister. He had a big impact on ordinary Germans and with his radio broadcasts and his speeches, and his Venus is trine Pluto, so that does make a certain amount of sense. But I do think we have to rethink what Venus in Libra actually is about. I don't think there's necessarily anything intrinsically soft about it. It can be about someone who does single-mindedly pursue their single-mindedly pursue their agenda. And it's also a very clear sense of balance. It's not just about supporting the balance. It can also be about overthrowing the balance, and actually going out of one's way to cause trouble and to stand up and express one's opinion. And one can have a view on justice that might be a right or a wrong view on justice. I suppose it depends on the situation. I mean, like with Galloway, him seeing the injustice of what America was doing in Iraq and the injustice of Gaza. So I could go on with other charts with Venus in Libra. Keir Starmer has Venus in Libra. Okay, I'm going to finish with Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer, I suppose, is relevant. He is a British Prime Minister, and he is seen as being, I suppose, an increasingly dictatorial Prime Minister. At least that's some people's view. A lot of people are really unhappy with him. And so here is his Venus in Libra, 25 Libra. So again, Venus in Libra, he has a clear sense of justice, for sure. He was a successful lawyer before he went into politics. But that was his sense of justice. And now he's continuing with his sense of justice in terms of what is right for Britain and who should go to prison, who should not go to prison. That's Venus in Libra. And his Venus in Libra is he's also got Sun conjunct Pluto. That is a very power-orientated conjunction. And this Sun-Pluto conjunction is semi-square his Venus in Libra. So that's telling us how his Venus in Libra is actually working. Okay, that's it on Venus and Libra. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you did enjoy this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be really, really grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.